The rain hammered against the glittering coastline of Boston, blurring the city lights into trembling streaks of gold and white. Waves crashed against the harbor with a violence that seemed to echo the storm raging in the skies above. In this city of wealth and power, where success was measured in square footage and investment portfolios, no one wanted to be out in such weather. But one small figure had no choice. Lily Bennett was only 7, but she had already learned that hunger had its own way of making the world cruel. Barefoot, her thin legs splashed through flooded alleys, her soaked dress clinging to her trembling body. She clutched a ragged toy rabbit against her chest, the last fragment of a life she could barely remember. Lightning split the sky, and for a moment her face appeared wide-eyed and desperate, framed by hair plastered to her hollow cheeks. She didn't know where she was running, only that the men shouting behind her earlier had finally given up. Now she was running from the rain, from fear, from loneliness itself. On the hill overlooking the harbor, the Morgan estate stood like a fortress of glass and stone, commanding the city with quiet authority. The mansion's walls glowed faintly under security lights, and its wrought iron gates rose like sentinels against uninvited guests. For most, it was untouchable, another reminder of how different the lives of the wealthy were from those below. But to Lily, it looked like the only place left where she might hide from the storm. She squeezed through a gap in the fence where the earth had eroded, scraping her arms on the cold metal. Her small frame disappeared into the manicured garden's hedges, bending under the weight of rain. She crouched behind a rosebush, her breath fogging in the chilled air. She might have stayed there until dawn, too frightened to move, if not for the sound of an engine humming gently up the drive. A sleek black car, polished even beneath sheets of rain, rolled slowly toward the garage. Inside, Nathan Morgan gripped the steering wheel with practiced calm. He was 45 years old, a man whose name commanded the real estate world from Boston to San Francisco. People spoke of him as unshakable, brilliant, impossibly disciplined. He lived alone in this palace of steel and marble, accompanied only by staff who came and went like shadows. Success had bought him everything, except the one thing he never admitted: he lacked connection. As the car stopped, Nathan slipped out, keys in hand. He adjusted his coat against the rain, already calculating the reports he needed to review before tomorrow's meeting in New York. But then a small voice cut through the storm. "May I sleep in your garage tonight?" He froze. For a moment, he wondered if the storm was playing tricks on his mind. He turned slowly, scanning the dim driveway until his eyes found her. A tiny figure, soaked to the bone, stood just a few feet away. Her lips trembled with each word, her eyes both pleading and afraid. "I'll be quiet, just until the storm passes." Nathan blinked, utterly unprepared. He had spent his life negotiating billion-dollar contracts. Yet here he was, undone by a child no taller than his waist. He had a garage, yes, but it was filled with cars worth more than most homes, temperature-controlled and sterile. The thought of a 7-year-old braving the night alone struck him like a physical blow. For a moment, the storm seemed to vanish, silence stretching between them. "You can't stay out here." The girl lowered her gaze to the puddles at her feet. "I won't make a mess. The garden is fine." He felt something twist inside his chest, an ache unfamiliar and unsettling. "What's your name, Lily?" she whispered. He crouched so that his eyes met hers. Up close, he could see the scratches on her arms, the mud caked on her small hands, the way her shoulders shook beneath the soaked fabric of her dress. But what struck him most were her eyes, dark and wide, and filled with a mixture of fear and a desperate kind of hope that seemed too old for her face. "Lily, I can't let you sleep outside. Come in at least until you're warm." Her eyes widened as though she had misheard him. "Inside, yes, inside." He opened the heavy door light spilling onto the stone steps. For years, those doors had welcomed only business partners and acquaintances. Now they stood open for a child who had asked only for a corner of shelter. She hesitated, glancing at her dripping clothes, then back at him. "I'll get everything dirty. Furniture can be cleaned." For the first time in a long while, he felt the truth of his words. Slowly, cautiously, Lily stepped across the threshold. Her small feet left wet prints on the polished marble floor, each step like a declaration that something had changed. She lifted her gaze to the grand chandelier glittering above the marble staircase, curling upward like something out of a storybook. Her mouth parted in wonder, but she said nothing. Nathan watched her, a strange mixture of pride and shame rising inside him. He had spent decades building this palace, collecting art-filling rooms with treasures. Yet it had never looked so different until seen through her eyes. "My name is Nathan. You're safe here tonight." Lily hugged the rabbit closer and nodded, her wet hair clinging to her cheeks. She didn't thank him. Perhaps she didn't trust yet that she wouldn't be asked to leave. But in her silence, Nathan felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had no idea why this moment mattered so much, but he knew with certainty that his life had just shifted as surely as the tides battering Boston's coast outside. The storm roared on, but inside the mansion a fragile calm began to bloom, one that neither the child nor the billionaire fully understood. The mansion was a world Lily had never seen before, a place where warmth poured from golden lights, and every surface gleamed as though it had never known dust. She stood just inside the door, dripping onto the marble floor, unsure whether to take another step. The scent of polished wood and faint cologne hung in the air, so different from the mildew and street smoke that clung to her clothes. Nathan placed his coat on a chair and looked down at her, not with the impatience of a man inconvenienced, but with a kind of cautious curiosity. "Come." His voice was steady but softer than before. He led her past paintings that looked as though they belonged in museums, past heavy velvet drapes that muted the storm outside. Lily trailed behind, her fingers brushing against the wall, as though she needed to confirm the house was real. He opened a door to a guest bathroom, and the sight before her made her gasp. Marble tiles stretched from floor to ceiling, reflecting the glow of a chandelier. A bathtub large enough to be a pool in her eyes filled slowly with steaming water as Nathan turned the polished faucets. The sound of rushing water was strange to her, not because she hadn't heard it before, but because here it meant safety and comfort. "Warm water," she whispered as though it were a secret. She stood motionless at the threshold, unwilling to step further. Nathan noticed her hesitation. He brought out towels from a nearby cabinet, soft Egyptian cotton, and placed them neatly by the tub. "It's for you." Her eyes widened. "For me?" He nodded. "You can take a bath. It will help you feel warm again." For a moment, Lily's lips trembled with the urge to protest. In her world, hot water was a privilege, not something freely offered. She stepped in carefully, her small hand resting on the marble rim as though it might vanish. She touched the rising steam, smiling faintly when it curled around her fingers. Nathan excused himself, leaving the door ajar so she would not feel trapped. In the quiet of his own thoughts, he was surprised by how deeply the image of her wonder touched him. He had designed this house to impress partners, to signal wealth, but tonight it served a far simpler purpose: to offer a child her first taste of comfort. When Lily finally emerged wrapped in a towel that nearly swallowed her whole, she looked transformed. Her hair fell in damp waves around her face, her cheeks flushed from the warmth. She clutched the towel tightly, eyes darting nervously as though unsure what would happen next. Nathan handed her one of his plain white t-shirts, so oversized it reached her knees. She put it on with careful precision, smoothing the fabric as if it were silk. "You must be hungry." She nodded without speaking, but the faint growl of her stomach answered for her. In the kitchen, Nathan opened a refrigerator lined with delicacies, imported cheeses, gourmet meals prepared by his chef, wines worth thousands. None of it seemed right. After a pause, he settled on something far simpler. He heated milk, whisking, and chocolate until it frothed and set out a plate of cookies from the pantry. The smell filled the room, sweet and inviting. Lily sat at the edge of a tall chair, her legs swinging but not reaching the ground. When the mug was placed in front of her, she hesitated. She held it with both hands as though it might be taken away at any moment. The first sip made her eyes close, and when she opened them again, tears shimmered at the edges. "It's too good." Her voice broke. Nathan watched silently, something in his chest tightening. She ate slowly, nibbling at each cookie, but he noticed her slipping one into the pocket of the oversized shirt when she thought he wasn't looking. Old habits of survival. He didn't stop her. Instead, he felt a quiet sorrow that a child so young had already learned to hoard food against tomorrow's hunger. When her small body began to sag with exhaustion, she asked timidly, "Can I sleep on the couch? I promise I won't make a mess." Nathan felt the weight of those words. She was asking permission to exist in his space, not demanding, not assuming. "You'll sleep in the guest room." Her eyes widened in shock, as though he had offered her a palace. He led her up the staircase to a room rarely used. The bed was vast, draped in linen, so white it almost glowed. Lily stood frozen at the doorway, staring at it as if it were a cloud. "It's too big. It's yours tonight." He adjusted the pillows awkward in a way that betrayed how long it had been since he had cared for anyone but himself. She climbed onto the bed, disappearing into the folds of the blanket, her rabbit toy tucked under her arm. As he switched off the light, leaving only a small lamp glowing, he heard her voice in the dark. "Thank you, Mr. Nathan." He paused. Gratitude from a child who had nothing struck him deeper than any accolade he had received in his career. He closed the door gently, his footsteps echoing in the silent hallway. That night, Nathan sat in his study surrounded by contracts and financial reports, but he couldn't concentrate. His thoughts returned again and again to the small figure curled in the guest bed. Something about her presence unsettled the carefully constructed walls he had built around himself. It wasn't pity. It was something heavier, more personal. For the first time in years, he questioned whether his life, his towering success, his endless solitude, had ever been enough. Down the hall, Lily slept more soundly than she had in months. For once, she did not dream of streets or hunger. She dreamed of warmth, of a voice that had not turned her away, of a house that might hold a corner just for her. Invisible wounds cannot be healed in a single night, but the storm outside had given her more than shelter. It had given her a glimpse of belonging, and for Nathan, it had cracked open a door he never knew he had locked. The sound of the rain softened, and in its rhythm lay the fragile beginning of a bond neither of them had expected. Morning sunlight spilled through the wide windows of the Morgan estate, flooding the marble floors with warmth. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lily awoke without shivering. She stretched beneath a heavy blanket, blinking at the golden light, disoriented by comfort itself. The night before felt like a dream. The bath, the food, the towering bed that had cradled her tiny body like a cocoon. She hugged her toy rabbit and whispered to it, as if reassuring herself that all of it was real. Downstairs, Nathan was already seated at the long dining table, a newspaper folded beside a steaming cup of coffee. His eyes, however, were not on the print. They kept drifting toward the hallway, waiting for the sound of small footsteps. When Lily appeared wearing the oversized shirt he had given her hair brushed smooth by a timid hand, he felt something stir in him. The house no longer seemed so cavernous, so empty. Breakfast was simple: toast, eggs, fresh fruit. Lily ate quietly, her posture alert, as though every bite might be her last. Nathan watched silently, noting the careful way she saved pieces of bread at the side of her plate. Invisible wounds lingered even in the smallest gestures. Later that morning, he decided to take her out. "You need proper clothes." She blinked at him, uncertain, until he added, "We'll go together, just a few things." They drove into Boston, the sleek car gliding along sunlit roads, until the city rose around them with its bustle and elegance. Lily pressed her face to the window, eyes wide at the sight of shop windows and cafes, the cathedral spires reaching into the sky. When Nathan guided her into a clothing store, she hesitated at the threshold, overwhelmed by racks of colors and textures she had never known. She picked the cheapest items she could find, tugging at his sleeve to show him a plain dress, a pair of jeans. "These are enough, Mr. Nathan. You don't have to spend so much." He studied her for a long moment before placing a hand on her shoulder. "Lily, you deserve more than enough." It was then, amid the hum of the store, that shadows from her past began to reemerge. As they walked toward the register, Lily's body stiffened. Her small hand clutched his arm with sudden strength. He followed her gaze to the street outside, where three men leaned against a wall, their eyes locked on her. Lily's breath quickened. Her whisper trembled. "It's them." The men began to move, pushing through the crowd. Nathan reacted without thinking, drawing her closer. He stepped outside, his presence towering, protective. The largest man, bearded and grinning with menace, spoke first. "Looks like you found our little friend. You've been following her." Nathan's voice cut through the air, sharp as glass. "She belongs to us." Another sneered, spitting on the ground. "Not about money. It's about respect. She came into our territory and now she owes us." Nathan felt a fury rise, raw and unfamiliar. "She's a child." His voice remained steady, though his pulse thundered. "You will not come near her again." The men laughed loud and mocking. Passers-by glanced but quickly looked away, pretending not to see. In that moment, Nathan understood his wealth and reputation meant nothing here. This was a world ruled by intimidation, where a frightened girl could vanish and no one would interfere. He pulled Lily behind him, her fingers digging into his sleeve. The men stepped closer, their laughter fading into threats. "We can make her disappear." The bearded one's voice lowered. Unless you'd like to make it worth our while. It was an extortion thinly veiled, a transaction dressed as menace. Nathan reached for his wallet, not because he thought money would solve it, but because he needed time. He handed over bills with a cold glare. Take this and never come back. The men accepted, but their smiles only grew sharper. Money won't change what she is. Street rats always crawl back. Lily trembled, her eyes brimming with tears, and Nathan felt the weight of her fear settle into his bones. He guided her quickly back into the car, locking the doors with a snap. As the engine roared to life, Lily buried her face against his sleeve. They won't stop. They never stop. Back at the mansion, silence clung to them. Nathan poured a glass of water for her, his hand steady, though his mind raced. He knew those men would not simply vanish. They would circle back, waiting for weakness. That evening, a new visitor arrived, a social worker from Boston's Child Protective Services, drawn by reports that a child had been seen entering the Morgan estate. Her name was Lauren Walker, a woman with kind eyes and the practiced calm of someone who had seen too many stories like Lily's. She asked questions, where Lily had come from, what Nathan intended. Lily clung to the arm of his chair, her voice breaking as she insisted, "He takes care of me. Please don't send me back." Lauren listened, her pen still against the paper. She explained the procedures, the need for documentation, the slow machinery of law. Nathan found himself bristling at the thought of bureaucracy deciding the fate of a child whose life had already been marked by indifference. Later, his sister arrived unannounced from her home in Cambridge. Rachel Morgan was a woman of academia, poised and unyielding. She entered the mansion like a storm, her voice sharp with accusation. "Nathan, what madness is this? A child from the streets. Do you realize the scandal this could cause?" Her words struck him harder than the threats of the men in Boston. To Rachel, everything was about reputation, the family name, the legacy they had built. She urged him to let social services handle it to protect their standing. But when Nathan looked at Lily, her small frame pressed against the back of the couch, eyes wide with fear, at the thought of losing her sanctuary he knew he had already chosen. The streets had left their shadows on her, but he would not let them take her back. The night grew long, filled with unanswered questions and threats that loomed larger than the storm outside. Yet as Lily drifted into uneasy sleep, Nathan sat beside her, his resolve hardening. Wealth alone could not shield her. To keep her safe, he would need something stronger than money. He would need courage he had not called upon in years, and a willingness to fight a battle that went far beyond boardrooms and contracts. The shadows from the streets had found them, and Nathan understood his life would never return to what it had been. Not after Lily, not now. When Lauren Walker returned the next morning, she carried a folder thick with documents and a weariness that suggested she had been up most of the night. She sat across from Nathan in his study, the morning light catching the silver in her dark hair. "I've arranged temporary emergency guardianship for 30 days. Her voice was professional, but tinged with something personal that Nathan couldn't quite identify. "During that time, we'll assess whether this arrangement is in Lily's best interest. She'll need regular sessions with a child psychologist. I'll need to make weekly visits. And you'll need to complete a mountain of paperwork." Nathan nodded, a relief washing over him. Lauren's eyes softened slightly. "This isn't the normal procedure, Mr. Morgan. But nothing about this situation is normal." She hesitated, glancing toward the door where Lily sat in the kitchen with George Miller, the butler who had surprised everyone by showing the child how to make pancakes that morning. "What made you decide to help her?" The question caught Nathan off guard. He looked out the window, watching the gardener trim hedges in the distance. "I don't know. She asked for so little. Just a corner to stay dry. How do you turn away from that?" Lauren studied him, her gaze assessing but not unkind. "Most people would have called the police, or simply walked past, especially men in your position." Nathan turned back to her, something hardening in his expression. "Then most people have forgotten what matters." The words surprised even him. Lauren nodded slowly, as if confirming something to herself. "The 30 days start today. Use them wisely, Mr. Morgan. There are people who won't want this to succeed." After she left, Nathan found Lily sitting at the island counter, a small plate of pancakes in front of her. She had been given new clothes, simple jeans and a blue sweater that made her eyes seem brighter. She looked up at him, anxiety etched across her features. "Do I have to go with her?" Nathan shook his head, settling onto the stool beside her. "Not today, not for at least 30 days. Relief flooded her face, but uncertainty lingered. "What happens after 30 days? Nathan cut a small piece of pancake buying time before answering. We'll figure that out together. For now, this is where you stay. She nodded, pushing a piece of pancake around her plate. Nathan noticed George watching from near the coffee maker, his usual stoic expression softened with something like approval. That afternoon, while Lily napped upstairs, exhausted from the emotional strain, Nathan called Patricia Huang, his attorney. The conversation was brief but intense. By the end, Patricia had clear instructions to begin investigating what legal pathways might exist for more permanent guardianship. Nathan sat in his office afterward, staring at a photograph on his desk. Elizabeth Morgan smiled back at him, her eyes bright with a joy he had once taken for granted. 10 years gone, yet sometimes the grief felt as fresh as yesterday. He wondered what she would make of all this. The child sleeping upstairs, his sudden commitment to protecting her. She would have brought her home immediately. No hesitation. The thought came with certainty. Elizabeth had always been the compassionate one, the one who saw beyond spreadsheets and market valuations to the human costs of decisions. She had wanted children desperately. The fertility treatments, the specialists, the hope that rose and fell like tides. And then the accident, stealing all possibility in a moment of twisted metal and shattering glass. He put the photograph down, something resolving in him. Perhaps this was not the family they had planned, but it was the one that had found him. That evening, as George prepared dinner, Nathan sat with Lily in the library, showing her books from the shelves. Her reading was halting but determined, and Nathan found himself both impressed by her intelligence and angered by how the world had failed her. Who allows a child this bright to end up on the streets? They established a routine over the next few days. Breakfast together then. Nathan would work in his office while Lily explored the mansion under George's watchful eye. Lunch in the sunroom, afternoons spent in the garden, or library dinner at the formal table that had rarely seen use before her arrival. Nathan found himself smiling more than he had in years. Simple things. Lily's delight at discovering the koi pond, her serious concentration as George taught her chess, the way she carefully arranged her new clothes in the guest room that was increasingly becoming hers. But shadows lingered at the edges. Lily's nightmares continued, sending her screaming into wakefulness, her small body trembling with remembered fears. Nathan would sit beside her bed, uncertain how to comfort, but unwilling to leave. One night, after a particularly bad dream, she finally spoke about the orphanage. The New Horizons Home for Children. That's what the sign said. Her voice was small in the darkness, but the words tumbled out with gathering momentum. It wasn't always bad. We had beds, food sometimes. But then the men in suits started coming. They would walk through the dormitory looking at us like we were things. She clutched her rabbit tighter. They took Mia first. She was 9, then Jason, then others. The director said they were being adopted, but they never said goodbye. And the ones they took never looked happy. Nathan felt cold dread spreading through his chest. One night I heard the director talking to a man in his office. He said I was special stock and would fetch a premium. I didn't understand, but I knew it was bad. So I ran. I hid in a delivery truck. Then I walked for days. That's how I got to Boston. Nathan's hand tightened on the bedsheet. Did you tell the police? She shook her head, fear flashing in her eyes. The director said police are friends of his. He said if we ever ran, they'd bring us back and we'd go to the basement. No one wants to go to the basement. Nathan swallowed his rage, keeping his voice gentle. You're safe now. I won't let anyone take you. The words felt hollow against the magnitude of what she described, but they were all he had to offer in the moment. Lily nodded, not entirely convinced, but comforted enough to eventually drift back to sleep. Nathan stayed awake, his mind churning with implications. This wasn't just about a homeless child. There was something darker behind Lily's story, something that explained why those men had been so interested in finding her, something that might explain why they continued to circle. The next morning, Nathan called Michael Rodriguez, a private investigator he had used for vetting business partners in the past. The conversation was brief and cryptic. Nathan was too aware of the need for discretion. But by afternoon, Michael had agreed to look into New Horizons and its operations. 5 days after Lily's arrival, Nathan took her shopping again, this time with George accompanying them for added security. They visited different stores, avoided the area where they had encountered the men before. Lily slowly began to relax, even showing excitement about choosing a backpack for the books Nathan had given her. It was in the bookstore that Nathan noticed her drawing attention to a specific book, a collection of fairy tales with colorful illustrations. When he purchased it for her, her smile transformed her face entirely. For a moment, she looked simply like a child unburdened by her past. That night, as they sat in the library, Nathan reading from the new book, Lily suddenly leaned against his arm, her small body warm and trusting. The gesture froze him mid-sentence. It was such a simple thing, a child seeking comfort from an adult, yet it cracked something open inside him that he had kept sealed for a decade. He continued reading, his voice a little rougher than before, and when he finally looked down, he found she had fallen asleep against him. He carried her upstairs to bed, her weight barely registering in his arms, and as he tucked the blanket around her, he realized he was smiling. The realization struck him with unexpected force. He was smiling. Not the practiced smile he used in board meetings or the polite curve of lips at charity galas. A real smile born of something genuine. Sometimes the family you need isn't the one you planned for. The thought came unbidden, and with it a pang of both grief and possibility. The next morning, Rachel returned, this time with a man Nathan recognized as her colleague from Harvard Law. They arrived unannounced, and Rachel's face was set in the expression he knew preceded an intervention. "We need to talk," without the child present. George smoothly offered to show Lily the greenhouse, sensing tension. Once they were alone, Rachel laid out papers on the dining table. "This is reckless, even for you. A street child with no documentation, no background. Do you have any idea of the liability you're taking on, the scrutiny this way will bring to the family?" Nathan remained silent, letting her expend her arguments. When she finally paused, he spoke quietly. "Are you finished?" The calmness of his tone seemed to unsettle her more than anger would have. "You've built an empire, Nathan. Everything father worked for, you've multiplied tenfold. Why risk it all for this charity case?" Nathan's eyes hardened. "Her name is Lily, and she's not a charity case. She's a child who needed help when no one else would give it." Rachel exchanged glances with her colleague, who cleared his throat. "Your sister is concerned about more than reputation, Mr. Morgan. There are legal implications. If this child was trafficked, if there are criminal elements involved in her past," Nathan cut him off. "All the more reason she needs protection." Rachel leaned forward, her voice lowering. "Nathan, be reasonable. There are proper channels for this sort of thing. Organizations equipped to handle traumatized children. You're not equipped for this. You're a businessman, not a father." The words struck deeper than she likely intended. Nathan stood, pushing back from the table. "Perhaps it's time I became both." After they left, Nathan found Lily in the greenhouse, her small fingers gently touching the petals of an orchid, while George explained how to care for the delicate plants. The sight calmed something in him, reinforced his resolve. That evening, as Lily helped George set the table for dinner, a task she had taken on with serious dedication, Nathan received a call from Michael Rodriguez. The investigator's voice was tense, his words careful. "There's more to this New Horizons operation than appears on the surface. The financials don't add up. They report minimal foreign adoptions, but I've tracked significant payments through offshore accounts. And the director, Victor Harlow, has connections to a larger international organization called New Beginnings." Nathan moved to his office, closing the door. "What kind of organization on paper? A multinational adoption agency? In reality, I'm not sure yet, but they have political protection, high-level donors, the kind of people who make problems disappear." A chill ran through Nathan. The kind of people who would pay to find a child who ran away. Michael's pause was answer enough. "Keep digging, whatever it costs." After dinner, as Lily drew pictures at the coffee table, Nathan noticed what she was creating. Dark figures in suits, children with fearful expressions, and a building with what appeared to be underground levels. He sat beside her, careful to keep his voice casual. "What are you drawing?" She didn't look up, her small hand moving the crayon with deliberate strokes. "The bad place. The basement." The darkness in the picture seemed to spread across the paper, consuming the small figures drawn in lighter colors at the edges. Nathan felt something cold settle in his stomach. Whatever Lily had escaped from it was worse than he had initially imagined. That night, he woke to the sound of breaking glass. The security system chimed softly. A window breach on the ground floor. Nathan moved swiftly, retrieving the handgun he kept secured in his bedroom safe. He checked Lily's room first. She was asleep undisturbed by the alarm that had been programmed to alert only the master bedroom. He moved silently down the stairs, years of martial arts training evident in his controlled movements. The alarm panel showed the breach in the library. As he approached, he could hear the faint sound of drawers being opened, papers shuffled. Nathan rounded the corner, weapon raised. "Don't move." The intruder, a man in dark clothes, face obscured by a ski mask, froze momentarily, then lunged toward the window. Nathan intercepted him, and the struggle was brief but violent. The intruder's fist connected with Nathan's jaw, but Nathan countered with precision, driving the man back against the bookshelf. Books cascaded around them as they grappled. George appeared in the doorway, alerted by the noise. The distraction was enough for the intruder to break free, shoving past the older man and fleeing through the broken window. Nathan started to pursue but stopped when he heard George's sharp intake of breath. The butler was leaning against the door frame, hand pressed to his shoulder. "He caught me with something sharp. It's not deep." Nathan helped him to a chair, examining the wound. A shallow cut, likely from a knife the intruder had pulled during their struggle. As he retrieved the first aid kit, Nathan surveyed the library. The desk had been searched, papers scattered. His laptop was open, though he was certain he had closed it before retiring. They were looking for information. But the question lingered as he tended to George's wound. The security company arrived 15 minutes later, followed by police. Nathan gave a statement downplaying the incident as a likely burglary attempt. He didn't mention Lily and was grateful when George followed his lead. After the officers left, promising increased patrols, Nathan checked on Lily again. She had slept through the entire incident, her small body curled around the rabbit toy expression, peaceful for once. Nathan watched her sleep, a new understanding settling over him. The men on the street, the intruder tonight, they weren't random threats. They were connected to whatever Lily had escaped from, and they wouldn't stop coming. The realization brought not fear, but a crystallizing resolve. He had built an empire by anticipating threats and neutralizing them before they materialized. Now he would use those same skills to protect Lily, not just for 30 days, but for as long as necessary. As dawn broke over Boston, painting the sky in shades of gold, and rose, Nathan Morgan made a promise to the sleeping child and to himself. The shadows hunting her had finally found something they couldn't intimidate or buy off. A man with nothing left to lose, and for the first time in a decade, something precious to protect. The morning after the break-in, the storm clouds had cleared, leaving a brilliant blue sky over Boston. But inside the Morgan mansion, tension lingered like smoke. Nathan examined the security footage in his study, watching the masked intruder's methodical movements through the library. This wasn't a random burglar seeking valuables. The man had gone straight for the desk, rifling through papers with purpose. Lauren Walker arrived for her scheduled visit, her expression shifting from professional to concerned when she noticed the boarded window and George's bandaged shoulder. What happened here, Nathan considered deflecting, but recognized the need for transparency if he hoped to keep Lily. Break-in last night. Nothing was taken. Lauren's eyes narrowed, her gaze drifting toward the stairs where Lily sat reading, unaware of their conversation. This wouldn't have anything to do with Lily, would it? Nathan hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. The truth might jeopardize his temporary guardianship, but lying to a social worker carried its own risks. "I believe it might. She's running from something more organized than street thugs." He explained Lily's nightmares, her drawings, the men who had confronted them while shopping. Lauren listened, her professional demeanor cracking slightly with each detail. "Have you contacted the police?" Nathan's jaw tightened. "I filed a report about the break-in. But Lily doesn't trust law enforcement. She believes some are involved with the people she's running from." Lauren's eyes widened. That's a serious allegation. Nathan led her to his study, showing her Lily's drawings. The men in suits, the children with fearful expressions, the building with its ominous basement. Lauren studied them, her expression darkening. "I've seen similar patterns from trafficking victims." She ran her fingers over the edge of one drawing, her voice softening. "You understand this complicates everything. If what she's suggesting is true, these people won't simply go away." Nathan met her gaze steadily. "I'm prepared for that." A subtle shift occurred in Lauren's demeanor. Respect, perhaps, or recognition of something unexpected in the billionaire businessman. "The temporary guardianship allows me to keep her situation confidential for now. But you need to understand, if there's an active threat, we may need to consider a more secure placement." Nathan's response came instantly, his voice leaving no room for debate. There is no place more secure than with me. The certainty in his tone seemed to surprise Lauren. She studied him with renewed interest before nodding slowly. I've arranged for Dr. Emily Chen. She specializes in childhood trauma. Lily's first appointment is tomorrow at 10. After Lauren left, Nathan found Lily in the library, carefully reshelving books that had fallen during the struggle. She worked methodically, her small hands smoothing creased pages with unexpected tenderness. Were you scared last night? Nathan asked, helping her reach a higher shelf. Lily paused, considering the question with characteristic seriousness. No, I knew you wouldn't let them take me. The simple faith in her words struck Nathan like a physical blow. He wondered if he deserved such trust, if he could truly protect her from whatever loomed in her past. Later that morning, Michael Rodriguez called with his preliminary findings about New Horizons. It's a maze of shell companies and offshore accounts, but I've found some disturbing patterns. The orphanage receives substantial funding through a parent organization called New Beginnings International. On paper, they facilitate adoptions primarily to wealthy foreign clients. Nathan frowned, moving to his window where he could see Lily sitting with George in the garden, learning to plant tulip bulbs. What's unusual about that? Rodriguez's voice lowered, caution evident in his tone. The numbers don't add up. They report maybe 15 international adoptions annually, but I've traced payments for nearly 100 placements each year. And these aren't standard adoption fees. We're talking six-figure sums per child. Something cold settled in Nathan's stomach. Human trafficking. Rodriguez didn't contradict him. And there's more. New Beginnings has connections to several politicians, judges, even some high-ranking police officials. They make substantial campaign contributions, host charity galas. They've built themselves quite the protective shield. Keep digging. Find me everything. Board members' locations, financial trails. And Michael, be careful. These people have resources. After ending the call, Nathan watched Lily through the window. She was laughing at something George had said, sunlight catching in her hair as she patted soil around a newly planted bulb. For a moment, she looked like any carefree child, the shadows of her past temporarily forgotten. The contrast between this moment of innocence and the ugliness Rodriguez had described fueled something primitive in Nathan's chest, a fierce protective rage he hadn't known himself capable of feeling. That afternoon, Nathan cleared his schedule, delegating meetings to his executive team with uncharacteristic abruptness. Instead, he spent hours with Lily, teaching her to play chess in the sunroom, the pieces catching golden light as she considered each move with intense concentration. Dad used to play chess with me. Before he left, the casual mention of her father, the first reference to her family beyond her mother, caught Nathan's attention. He kept his tone neutral, not wanting to disrupt this rare moment of the sharing. Was that before the orphanage? Lily nodded, moving upon with careful deliberation. Mom said he went away for work and never came back. Then it was just us until the fire. She captured one of Nathan's nights, a small smile of triumph flickering across her face before fading into solemnity. Mom tried to get us out. She woke me up, wrapped me in a wet blanket. The smoke was everywhere. She told me to follow the wall to the door, but then something fell. Her voice trailed off, fingers tightening around the chess piece. Nathan resisted the urge to press for details, allowing her the space to share only what she could bear to revisit. She was very brave, your mother. Lily nodded, her eyes focusing on the chessboard with renewed intensity. Your move, Mr. Nathan. The next morning brought Lily's first appointment with Dr. Chen. The child psychologist's office occupied the top floor of a brownstone in Boston's Back Bay, its waiting room designed to put children at ease with comfortable furniture and subtle colors. Lily clung to Nathan's hand as they entered, her earlier confidence evaporating in this unfamiliar environment. Dr. Chen, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a calm demeanor, greeted them warmly. You must be Lily. I've heard you're quite the chess player. The simple acknowledgement of something positive about herself seemed to ease Lily's tension slightly. She nodded, still pressed against Nathan's side. Chen addressed Nathan with professional courtesy. I'll need about an hour with Lily. There's a cafe downstairs if you'd like to wait there. Nathan felt Lily's grip tighten on his hands, sensed her mounting anxiety at the prospect of separation. He crouched to meet her eyes. I'll be right downstairs. Dr. Chen is here to help us make sure you can stay with me. The strategic framing worked. Lily's posture straightened resolve, replacing fear in her expression. She released his hand and followed Dr. Chen into the inner office, glancing back only once before the door closed. In the cafe below, Nathan found himself unable to focus on work emails, his thoughts repeatedly returning to Lily upstairs. He was surprised by how quickly she had become central to his world, how thoroughly she had disrupted the careful order of his existence, and how little he minded the disruption. An hour later, emerging from the office, Lily appeared subdued but not distressed. Chen asked to speak with Nathan privately while Lily waited in the reception area with a book. She's experienced significant trauma not just from losing her mother, but from what she witnessed at the orphanage. The drawings are concerning. They suggest she observed activities consistent with child trafficking. Nathan's jaw tightened. Can she testify? Would her account hold up legally? Dr. Chen sighed, compassion and realism warring in her expression. She's 7, Mr. Morgan. Her testimony alone wouldn't be enough without corroborating evidence. And the psychological cost of putting her through that, she let the implication hang in the air between them. For now, my recommendation is stability, consistency therapy. She needs to feel safe before she can fully process what she's experienced. Nathan nodded, already formulating plans beyond the doctor's cautious approach. He thanked her and collected Lily, who seemed relieved to leave the office despite Chen's gentleness. On the drive home, rain began to fall, fat droplets spattering against the windshield in an accelerating rhythm. Lily watched the water trace patterns on the glass, her expression thoughtful. Dr. Chen asked about the bad men, if I could recognize them again. Nathan kept his eyes on the road, careful to maintain a neutral tone. What did you tell her? Lily's response was matter-of-fact, chilling in its simplicity. I told her I remember all their faces, especially Mr. Preston's. Nathan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Who is Mr. Preston, the big boss? He came to the orphanage in a black car with a driver. He would look at us like we were puppies in a pet store. The director was always extra nice to him, calling him Sir and Mr. Preston. He picked which kids would go away. The casual delivery of this information contrasted sharply with its horrifying implications. Nathan filed away the name, another piece in the increasingly disturbing puzzle. That evening, George prepared Lily's favorite meal, spaghetti with meatballs, having noticed her particular delight in twirling the noodles around her fork. As they ate, the doorbell rang, an unusual occurrence given the estate's gated entrance and security protocols. George answered while Nathan remained with Lily, tension coiling through his body until the butler returned accompanied by Rachel. Unlike her previous visit, she arrived alone, her expression uncharacteristically hesitant. Lily stiffened at the sight of her, remembering their previous encounter. Rachel acknowledged the child with an awkward nod before addressing her brother. I need to speak with you. It's important. Nathan led her to his study, leaving Lily with George to finish dinner. Once the door closed behind them, Rachel's composure fractured slightly. I've been making inquiries about New Horizons, discreetly through colleagues. Nathan's surprise must have shown on his face because Rachel continued with unusual defensiveness. You're my brother, Nathan. I may think you've lost your mind, but that doesn't mean I'll stand by if there's something criminal happening. She placed a file on his desk, her academic precision evident in its careful organization. New Horizons has political protection at the state level. Senator James Crawford sits on the board of their parent organization, New Beginnings International. He's channeled significant federal grants their way over the past 5 years. Nathan opened the file, scanning documents that confirmed Rodriguez's findings while adding new layers of complexity. Why are you doing this? Rachel? She didn't answer immediately, moving to the window that overlooked the garden where tulip bulbs now lay beneath freshly turned soil. I saw how you looked at her. It's how you used to look at Elizabeth. The mention of his wife's name sent a jolt through Nathan. Rachel continued, her voice softening. After she died, it was like watching you disappear by inches. You built this empire, but you vanished inside it. Then this child appears, and suddenly my brother is back. She turned to face him, her academic reserve giving way to something more vulnerable. I'm still not convinced this isn't going to end badly for you. But if caring for her brings you back to life, I can't stand in the way of that. And if there are children being harmed, that's something I can't ignore, regardless of my concerns about your situation. Nathan felt an unexpected surge of gratitude toward his sister, this woman who had always approached life through the lens of logic rather than emotion. What do you suggest? Rachel straightened Professor Mode engaging. We need a two-pronged approach, legal and public. I've drafted a strategy. By the time Rachel left, night had fallen, completely rain, still drumming against the windows with increasing intensity. Nathan found Lily in the library with George the butler, reading aloud from her book of fairy tales while she followed along, occasionally correcting his pronunciation with serious concentration. The domestic tableau struck Nathan with unexpected force. In just days, this child had transformed his home from a showcase into something lived and something warm. Over the next week, a routine established itself. Mornings began with breakfast together, followed by lessons with the tutor Nathan had engaged. Lily's education having been neglected at the orphanage. Afternoons included sessions with Dr. Chen, explorations of the garden chess matches that grew increasingly competitive as Lily's skills developed. Each night Nathan read to her before bed, and each morning he found himself rising earlier than his usual hour, anticipating the day with an enthusiasm that had been absent from his life 4 years. But shadows continued to gather at the edges of this newfound peace. Rodriguez's investigation uncovered more about William Preston, a wealthy financier with political ambitions whose philanthropy disguised darker enterprises. The man maintained homes in Boston, New York, and Washington, D.C., moving in elite circles where his charitable foundation, New Beginnings International, earned him accolades and influence. Preston's official biography described him as a widower in his mid-50s, childless, but devoted to providing opportunities for disadvantaged youth worldwide. The glossy public image contrasted sharply with what Rodriguez discovered beneath the surface: offshore accounts, shell companies, and a pattern of adoptions that resulted in children disappearing into wealthy households across Europe and Asia. Most disturbing were the connections Preston had cultivated. Judges who dismissed cases against his organizations, police chiefs who redirected investigations, politicians who ensured regulatory oversight remained minimal. The web of protection surrounding him seemed impenetrable. Nathan shared these findings with Rachel during her increasingly frequent visits. The siblings bent over documents spread across his desk, strategizing with the focused intensity that had characterized their childhood competitions. "We need leverage," Rachel insisted, tapping a manicured finger against Preston's photograph in a society magazine. "Something concrete that can't be buried or explained away." Nathan nodded, his mind returning to Lily's drawings, her casual mention of the basement where children were taken for punishment. "If we could locate other children who've escaped." Rachel shook her head. "They'd be too scared to come forward. And Preston's lawyers would tear apart testimony from traumatized minors. They needed evidence that couldn't be dismissed. Financial records, correspondence, witness testimony from inside Preston's organization. But gathering such evidence would require resources beyond even Nathan's considerable reach. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Lauren Walker arrived for her weekly visit, her professional demeanor strained by evident exhaustion. As she observed Lily's interaction with Nathan, making notes for her report, she mentioned casually that another child had been found. A boy, approximately 9 years old, discovered sleeping in the back of a delivery truck in Cambridge. He mentioned a place called New Horizons, said he ran away because they were going to take him to the special house. Nathan's attention sharpened immediately. "Where is he now?" Lauren hesitated, conflict evident in her expression. "I shouldn't be discussing this with you. It's confidential." Nathan leaned forward, voice low to prevent Lily from overhearing. "Lauren, if this boy escaped from the same place as Lily, he could be in danger. These people don't just let their merchandise walk away." The crude terminology made Lauren flinch, but she couldn't dispute the assessment. The boy had been placed in emergency foster care, his case assigned to another social worker in Lauren's department. After Lauren departed, Nathan contacted Rodriguez, immediately instructing him to locate the boy and ensure his safety, discreetly without alerting authorities who might be compromised. That evening, as storm clouds gathered once more over Boston, Nathan received an unexpected call from Patricia Huang. Her typically measured voice carried an unusual edge of urgency. "There's a legal complication. Someone has filed for custody of Lily." Nathan's blood ran cold. "Who?" "Ani, a distant relative, allegedly. The paperwork was filed this morning. They're claiming to be her maternal uncle with documentation to support it." Nathan glanced toward the garden where Lily was helping George collect the last tomatoes from the greenhouse, her laughter visible through the glass even if he couldn't hear it. "It's fake." She told me her mother had no siblings. Patricia's silence communicated her understanding of the situation's gravity. They've scheduled an emergency hearing for Friday. Judge Harmon's court. The name triggered recognition. One of the judges Rodriguez had flagged as having connections to Preston's foundation. They're making their move. Patricia's voice hardened with rare emotion. I'll fight this with everything I have, Nathan. But you should prepare Lily, just in case. After ending the call, Nathan remained at the window watching as George showed Lily how to tell which tomatoes were perfectly ripe. The domesticity of the scene contrasted sharply with the threat now looming over them. Preston was attempting to reclaim Lily through legal channels using falsified documents and a corrupt judge to give the process a veneer of legitimacy. If he succeeded, Lily would disappear into his network, her fate unthinkable. Nathan's hands curled into fists, his reflection in the window glass, revealing an expression he barely recognized. Primitive fierce, the civilized veneer of the businessman stripped away by primal, protective instinct. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Nathan convened an emergency meeting in his study. Rachel Rodriguez, Patricia Huang, and after some deliberation, Lauren Walker, whose inside knowledge of the child welfare system had become invaluable. They're using the system against us, Patricia explained, spreading legal documents across Nathan's desk. The alleged uncle, James Bennett, has paperwork showing he's been searching for Lily since her mother's death. The documentation looks legitimate right down to birth certificates and family photographs. Rodriguez examined the photographs with professional skepticism. They're good forgeries, high quality. But if you look closely at this family portrait, you can see digital manipulation around the edges of this man's figure. Nathan leaned over the image. A woman who resembled an older version of Lily stood beside a man whose arm rested awkwardly around her shoulders, the lighting on his face subtly different from the rest. Can we prove they're fake? Rodriguez grimaced. Given time, yes. But the hearing is in 2 days. Lauren, who had been studying the legal papers with increasing alarm, looked up with sudden intensity. This process is being expedited unnaturally. Even with proper documentation, custody transfers don't happen this quickly. Someone's pulling strings. Rachel nodded grimly. Judge Harmon received a substantial donation from Preston's foundation last year. His daughter's private school tuition is paid through a scholarship program New Beginnings sponsors. The web of corruption surrounding Preston became clearer with each piece of information they uncovered. He had spent years building a network of influence, placing his pawns in positions of authority throughout the system. Even with their combined resources, Nathan's team faced an opponent who had prepared his battlefield long in advance. We need to go public, Rachel insisted. A media explosion would make it harder for them to operate in the shadows. Patricia shook her head. The gag order on Lily's case prevents that. Any violation would jeopardize Nathan's standing with the court. The legal barriers seemed designed specifically to isolate Lily, to cut off avenues of protection until Preston could reclaim her through apparently legitimate means. As the strategy session continued late into the night, Nathan found his thoughts straying to Lily sleeping upstairs, unaware of the forces mobilizing against her. He had promised to protect her, yet the system designed to safeguard children was being weaponized to deliver her back to her abusers. The next morning brought another complication. Lauren arrived unscheduled, her expression grave as she requested a private conversation with Nathan. There's something you need to know. The boy who escaped, Jason Miller, he's disappeared from his foster home. The police are treating it as a runaway case, but the implication hung between them, unspoken but understood. Preston's people had found the boy. Lauren's professional composure cracked genuine fear bleeding through. These people have reach beyond anything I've encountered. They're inside the system, Nathan, inside my department. She ran a hand through her hair, a gesture of frustration he'd never seen from her before. I've requested reassignment from Lily's case. Not because I want to abandon her, but because I think I'm being watched. If I distance myself officially, I might be able to help more effectively from the outside. The strategy made sense, but it eliminated one of their few allies within the child welfare system. As Lauren prepared to leave, she paused at the door, conflict evident in her expression. Be careful who you trust, Nathan. Even people who seem to be on your side. The warning lingered after her departure, adding a new layer of paranoia to an already tense situation. Nathan found himself scrutinizing everyone who entered his home, questioning motives and connections with newfound suspicion. That afternoon, as Lily worked on lessons with her tutor, Nathan received another call from Rodriguez. "I've found something. Financial records linking Preston directly to international wire transfers for merchandise acquisition. The accounts were supposedly for art imports, but the destinations match with orphanages in 5 different countries." Hope flared briefly. Is it enough for the FBI? Rodriguez's hesitation provided the answer before his words. "Maybe if we had a sympathetic agent. But Preston has connections in the Bureau too. We'd need to be certain our contact isn't compromised." The maze of corruption seemed endless, each potential path to justice blocked by Preston's influence. Nathan felt a growing certainty that conventional methods would fail, that saving Lily might require actions outside the boundaries of law. As evening approached, Nathan took Lily for a walk through the garden, trying to maintain normalcy despite the storm gathering around them. She had sensed the tension in the household, her perceptiveness far beyond her years. Are the bad men coming back? The directness of her question caught Nathan off guard. He considered deflecting, but remembered Dr. Chen's emphasis on honesty as the foundation of trust. "There are people who want to take you away, but I won't let that happen." Lily nodded, absorbing this information with the gravity that characterized her responses to difficult truths. Her small hand slipped into his, a gesture of trust that tightened something in his chest. "I knew they would try again. They always do." The resignation in her voice, the voice of a child who had never known adults to keep their promises of protection, strengthened Nathan's resolve. Whatever the con, he would not become another adult who failed her. That night, as storm clouds gathered once more over Boston, Nathan finalized contingency plans with his team. If the court ruled against them, an outcome that seemed increasingly likely given Judge Harmon's connections, they would need to move quickly to prevent Lily from being transferred to Preston's custody. Rachel had secured documents for an emergency appeal while Rodriguez had arranged transportation options if legal remedies failed. The possibility of becoming a fugitive with Lily, abandoning his business empire, his home, his identity, loomed as an increasingly probable outcome. As Nathan checked on Lily before retiring to his own room, he found her awake, staring out the window at the approaching storm. Lightning illuminated her face in brief flashes, revealing an expression too solemn for a child her age. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" The request was unusual. She had grown increasingly independent about bedtime routines. Nathan sat on the edge of her bed, watching as she clutched her rabbit toy with unusual tightness. "I had a dream about the basement again. But this time you were there too." The implication sent a chill through him. Her nightmares had evolved to include threats to him as well, a reflection of her growing attachment and her fear of losing yet another person she had allowed herself to trust. After she finally drifted to sleep, Nathan returned to his study, unable to find rest himself. The hearing loomed less than 24 hours away, and despite their preparations, he felt a growing certainty that Preston's influence would prevail in the courtroom. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Rooftop, Park Plaza Hotel, 11 p.m. Come alone. Information about Preston." Nathan stared at the message, suspicion warring with desperate hope for any advantage against their opponent. The meeting could be a trap, an attempt to remove him from the equation before the hearing. But if there was even a chance of obtaining evidence against Preston, he couldn't ignore it. After ensuring Lily was safely asleep and instructing George to remain vigilant, Nathan drove into Boston, the night sky occasionally illuminated by distant lightning. The storm had not yet broken, but hung suspended in the atmosphere, charging the air with electricity and anticipation. The Park Plaza Hotel's rooftop garden was deserted at this hour, accessible only through a service elevator, requiring a key card. Nathan had obtained access through one of Patricia's contacts, unwilling to announce his presence at the front desk. He emerged onto the rooftop, the wind whipping his coat around him as he scanned the shadowy space for his mysterious contact. For several minutes, he stood alone among carefully arranged planters and unoccupied tables, doubt growing with each passing moment. Then a figure emerged from behind a decorative trellis, a woman in her 40s, her face partially obscured by the upturned collar of her coat. "Mr. Morgan, thank you for coming." The voice was vaguely familiar, though Nathan couldn't immediately place it. He remained near the elevator, maintaining distance from the stranger. "Who are you?" The woman stepped forward, lowering her collar. "I worked for New Beginnings, administrative staff. I processed the paperwork for the special adoptions." Her emphasis on the euphemism carried clear disgust. Nathan studied her face, searching for signs of deception. Why contact me? She glanced nervously toward the service door, as if expecting interruption at any moment. I saw your name connected to the Bennett girl. When Preston started mobilizing to reclaim her, I knew what would happen to her if he succeeded. Nathan moved closer, hope and suspicion still battling within him. Why help now? Why not go to the authorities? Bitter laughter escaped her. Preston owns half the authorities in this city. The ones he doesn't own, he can discredit or intimidate. She reached into her coat, producing a USB drive that she held out to Nathan. Financial records, correspondence, client lists with payments. Everything I could download before I left. It won't be enough for the hearing tomorrow. There's no time to authenticate it properly. But it's a start. Nathan accepted the drive, still wary of a potential trap. Why are you doing this? The woman's expression hardened, old pain surfacing in her eyes. I have a niece. She was placed in New Horizons after my sister died. By the time I located her, she had already been adopted through Preston's program. I've never found her. The personal motivation rang true, aligning with what Nathan had learned about Preston's operation. He pocketed the drive, already planning how to secure and analyze its contents. This puts you at risk, she nodded, resignation evident in her posture. I'm leaving the country tonight. New identity, new start. This is all I can do for the children still in his system. As she turned to leave, Nathan called after her. Your name, I should know who helped us. She paused, seeming to weigh the risk of disclosure against some personal need for acknowledgement. Karen. Karen Mitchell. The name meant nothing to Nathan, but he committed it to memory nonetheless. One more piece in the complex puzzle surrounding Preston and his organization. Returning to his car, Nathan examined the USB drive, aware that it could contain malware designed to breach his security systems. Rather than connecting it to any of his personal devices, he drove to a 24-hour electronics store, purchasing a new laptop with cash, and uploading the drive's contents using the store's public Wi-Fi. The files confirmed Rodriguez's findings while adding crucial details: names of wealthy clients, dates of adoptions, financial transactions disguised as charitable contributions. Most damning were email exchanges between Preston and various officials discussing specific children as merchandise with premium characteristics. Nathan forwarded the information to Patricia and Rodriguez, knowing it wouldn't arrive in time to influence the hearing, but might prove valuable for their contingency plans. Then he destroyed the laptop and drive, eliminating any trace of the transaction. As he drove back toward the estate, the storm finally broke over Boston, rain hammering against the windshield with apocalyptic fury. Lightning split the sky in jagged bursts, momentarily transforming the familiar cityscape into something alien and threatening. The meteorological violence matched Nathan's internal state, a tempest of rage, fear, and determination as he contemplated what awaited them at tomorrow's hearing. Judge Harmon would almost certainly rule in favor of the fictitious uncle, placing Lily in Preston's reach. Their legal options would narrow to desperate appeals, unlikely to succeed given the corruption embedded in the system. The contingency plans now seemed inevitable rather than precautionary, a reality he needed to prepare for with the same strategic precision he had applied to business acquisitions and corporate takeovers. As he pulled through the estate gates, Nathan noticed an unfamiliar car parked near the side entrance, a black sedan with government plates. Alarm surged through him as he parked and rushed inside, fearing Preston had somehow accelerated his timetable. He found George in the kitchen, preparing a pot of coffee despite the late hour. The butler's expression carried unusual tension. Ms. Walker is here. She's quite agitated. Nathan found Lauren in his study, pacing before the fireplace with frenetic energy that contrasted sharply with her typical composure. They've moved up the hearing, 8 a.m. tomorrow instead of 4 p.m. They're trying to catch us unprepared. The news confirmed Nathan's suspicion that Preston was manipulating the process with increasing desperation. The change in schedule would disrupt their carefully planned legal strategy, forcing Patricia to present the arguments with minimal preparation. There's more. The alleged uncle, James Bennett, he's in town, staying at the Four Seasons under private security. I have a contact in hotel management who confirmed it. The proximity of their opponent added urgency to an already critical situation. If the court ruled in Bennett's favor, the transfer of custody could happen immediately, leaving no window for appeals or alternative measures. Lauren ran a hand through her disheveled hair, exhaustion evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. They know I've been helping you. My supervisor called me in today, questioned me about unauthorized access to case files. I've been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The development eliminated their last official channel within the child welfare system. Preston was systematically isolating Lily, cutting off avenues of protection one by one. Nathan's phone buzzed with a message from Patricia confirming she had received the files from Karen Mitchell and was adjusting their legal strategy accordingly. But her assessment remained grim. The evidence, while damning, would require time to authenticate time they no longer had. As Lauren prepared to leave, offering to return early the next morning to accompany them to court, Nathan found himself studying her with new intensity, Karen Mitchell's warning about trust echoing in his mind. Lauren had appeared in their lives immediately after Lily's arrival, ostensibly drawn by reports of a child at the Morgan estate. Her involvement had deepened beyond professional obligation, her assistance increasingly personal rather than procedural. The pattern nagged at Nathan's strategic instincts, triggering suspicion he couldn't entirely dismiss. Before she reached the door, Nathan's voice stopped her. "How did you know about the change in the hearing time?" Lauren turned, confusion crossing her features. "My colleague texted me." Why the explanation was plausible, yet Nathan found himself pressing further. "And your contact at the Four Seasons? How did you know to check there specifically for Bennett?" Something flickered in Lauren's expression. Alarm, perhaps, or recognition of his suspicion. "I didn't. I have contacts at several hotels who alert me when high-profile custody cases might involve their guests." Again, a reasonable explanation. But Nathan's instincts, honed through decades of high-stakes negotiations, detected subtle dissonance in her response. "And your administrative leave. Convenient timing, just when we need official representation most." Lauren's posture shifted, defensive energy replacing exhaustion. "What exactly are you implying, Nathan?" He moved toward his desk, maintaining distance between them as he considered his next words carefully. "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking for clarity, for we walk into that courtroom tomorrow with Lily's future at stake." Lauren's expression hardened, professional distance reasserting itself in her tone. "I've put my career on the line for that child. I've violated departmental protocols, accessed restricted files, ignored conflicts of interest, all to help you protect her." She stepped forward, indignation overriding caution. "You think I'm working for Preston? That this has all been some elaborate setup?" Nathan watched her carefully, assessing the authenticity of her outrage. The possibility that she was another of Preston's pawns, strategically positioned to monitor Lily and report their movements, couldn't be dismissed despite their apparent alliance. Before he could respond, a small voice interrupted from the doorway. "Mrs. Lauren wouldn't hurt me." Lily stood in her pajamas, the rabbit toy clutched against her chest, her expression solemn as she observed the tension between the adults. Her certainty gave Nathan pause. This child, who had learned to distrust authority through brutal experience, had formed her own assessment of Lauren's character. "She visits me when you're in meetings sometimes. She brings me books and doesn't make me talk about the bad things if I don't want to." The revelation of these private interactions, conducted without his knowledge, initially heightened Nathan's suspicion before he recognized their significance. Lauren had formed a relationship with Lily independent of her official role or her connection to Nathan, investing time when there was no strategic advantage in doing so. Lauren's expression softened as she addressed Lily. "You should be asleep, sweetheart. Tomorrow's an important day." Lily nodded but didn't retreat from the doorway. "I had another dream." About the basement. The casual mention of her recurring nightmare shifted the atmosphere in the room, redirecting attention from personal suspicions to their shared concern for her well-being. Lauren moved toward the child with natural ease, crouching to meet her at eye level. Was it the same dream as before? Lily shook her head, unusual animation entering her typically guarded expression. "No, this time I saw their special room, where they keep the important papers. It's behind a painting of a boat." The specificity of the detail caught both adults' attention. Lily continued, the information spilling out with increasing urgency. "Mr. Preston has a big desk with a glass top. He keeps a special key in the middle drawer. It opens the cabinet where they keep the folders with our pictures and the money papers." Lauren glanced at Nathan, the implication clear. Lily was describing Preston's office, with remarkable precision details that could prove crucial if they ever gained access to the space. How do you know this, Lily? The child's response carried the simple logic of childhood. I followed him once, when he came to check on us at night. I was supposed to be asleep, but I wanted to see where he went. His office is on the top floor. It has big windows that look at the river. The inadvertent reconnaissance, conducted by a child who had learned to observe her captors carefully, provided unexpected intelligence about Preston's operation. If accurate, it suggested his private office contained physical evidence that could corroborate the digital files Karen Mitchell had provided. Nathan exchanged glances with Lauren, their earlier tension temporarily suspended by this new information. Tomorrow's hearing loomed as an imminent threat, but Lily had unknowingly provided a potential avenue for more definitive action against Preston's entire organization. As Lauren gently escorted Lily back to bed, Nathan remained in his study, the storm still raging outside, as he contemplated the increasingly limited options before them. Conventional legal channels seemed destined to fail given Preston's influence. Even with Patricia's expertise and the evidence from Karen Mitchell, the corrupted system appeared stacked against them. The alternative, fleeing with Lily abandoning his identity and empire to protect her, carried its own significant risks. Preston's reach extended nationally, perhaps internationally. There would be no safe harbor within conventional society. A third option crystallized in Nathan's mind, one that aligned with his strategic nature while acknowledging the extraordinary circumstances they faced. If the system was corrupted beyond remedy, perhaps the solution lay not in escaping it, but in changing the rules of engagement entirely. When Lauren returned from settling Lily, she found Nathan at his desk, his expression transformed by a new resolution. I owe you an apology. This situation has made me question everyone's motives. Lauren's nod acknowledged his words without fully accepting them, professional caution still evident in her posture. Tomorrow's hearing is likely a foregone conclusion. Judge Harmon will rule in Bennett's favor. We need to be prepared for what follows. The stark assessment matched Lauren's own understanding of their situation. What she couldn't anticipate was the strategy forming in Nathan's mind, a countermove against Preston that would leverage the billionaire's resources in ways neither the corrupt judge nor the trafficking network could predict. As lightning continued to split the sky over Boston, Nathan Morgan made his final preparations for the battle ahead, his resolve hardened by a simple truth. Sometimes protecting the innocent required stepping outside the boundaries of conventional warfare. The storm would pass by morning, but its echoes would reverberate through the lives of everyone connected to the child sleeping upstairs. The girl who had asked only for shelter and instead catalyzed a reckoning that would shake foundations Preston believed unassailable. Morning arrived with crisp autumn sunlight streaming through the courthouse windows, belying the gravity of what transpired within. The weathered oak benches of courtroom 16 held only a handful of observers. Patricia Huang and her associate Rachel Morgan, Lauren Walker, and in the back row Michael Rodriguez, his presence unannounced but vigilant. Nathan sat at the defendant's table, his normally impeccable suit looking slightly rumpled after a sleepless night. Beside him, Lily perched on the edge of her chair, unnaturally still, in her blue dress, the rabbit toy clutched against her side. Across the aisle, a man in his late 30s with sandy hair and practiced sincerity sat beside an attorney. Nathan recognized as Clayton Reynolds, one of Boston's most expensive family law specialists. James Bennett, the supposed uncle, met Nathan's gaze briefly before looking away, his discomfort visible despite obvious coaching. Judge Harold Harmon entered his robes flowing around his substantial frame as he took his seat at the bench. His reputation for efficiency in family court cases often translated to cursory reviews and rapid decisions, a quality that had likely factored into Preston's selection of him for this case. The proceedings moved with unsettling speed, legal formalities dispatched with practiced indifference. Reynolds presented documentation attesting to Bennett's relationship to Lily. Birth certificates, family photographs, even school records allegedly showing Bennett listed as an emergency contact before the mother's death. The case had been so thoroughly constructed that even Patricia's skilled cross-examination made minimal impact. When Bennett described searching desperately for his niece after the fire, his practiced grief seemed genuine enough to satisfy the cursory scrutiny of a judge with no interest in digging deeper. Lily's testimony came next, her small voice barely audible in the cavernous courtroom, as she insisted she had never seen Bennett before, that her mother had no brothers. But Judge Harmon dismissed her statements with paternal condescension, noting that childhood trauma often affected memory, particularly in one so young. When Patricia attempted to introduce the evidence from Karen Mitchell's files, Judge Harmon swiftly blocked its admission on procedural grounds, citing lack of authentication and proper chain of custody. Each legal avenue Patricia pursued met similar barriers, the judge's rulings creating an inexorable path toward his predetermined conclusion. By mid-morning, the outcome had crystallized with brutal clarity. Judge Harmon leaned forward, his expression fixed in a mask of judicial concern that failed to reach his eyes. Having reviewed all admissible evidence, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff. Custody of Lily Bennett is hereby transferred to her uncle James Bennett, effective immediately. Nathan felt Lily's hand grip his with desperate strength, her face drained of color. Patricia immediately rose to request a stay pending appeal, but Judge Harmon overruled her before she completed the motion. Given the child's extended separation from her family and Mr. Morgan's lack of biological relation, immediate reunification serves the child's best interests. Court officers will supervise the transfer of custody in the anteroom. The clinical language disguised what amounted to illegal kidnapping. Nathan turned to Lily, whose eyes had widened with terror she could no longer conceal. He crouched beside her chair, his voice pitched for her ears alone. "Remember what we practiced? You're stronger than they know." A court officer approached, hand extended toward Lily, with bureaucratic detachment. Nathan rose to his full height, his expression causing the young officer to hesitate momentarily. 5 minutes to say goodbye. Then she comes with us. The small concession was delivered with uncomfortable awareness of the emotional current running through the courtroom. Nathan led Lily to a corner near Patricia's table, positioning his body to shield their conversation from observation. He embraced her tightly, feeling her small frame trembling against him. "Remember the dragonfly." The code phrase triggered a flash of recognition in Lily's eyes. During the night after Lauren's departure, Nathan had prepared her for this outcome, establishing emergency protocols disguised as a game. The stuffed rabbit toy she clutched contained a specially designed tracking device activated by a particular sequence of movements. The blue dress had been selected specifically because its hidden pocket could accommodate the small communication device currently disguised as a decorative pin on her collar. "I'm scared." The whispered admission cut through Nathan's strategic focus, reminding him that beneath the brave face and remarkable intelligence lay a 7-year-old child who had already endured more trauma than most adults. "So am I, but fear doesn't mean we're not brave. It just means what we're doing matters." The court officer returned unmoved by the emotional tableau. "Time's up." Lily's fingers dug into Nathan's sleeve before she visibly steeled herself, straightening her small shoulders with extraordinary composure. The transformation from frightened child to determined survivor occurred in the space of a breath, her expression settling into careful blankness that revealed nothing of her internal state. As the officer led her away, Lily didn't look back. Another element of their plan, though Nathan suspected it cost her tremendous effort. Bennett followed with his attorney, maintaining the appropriate distance of a concerned relative, respecting a child's need for adjustment. Only Nathan, Patricia, and Rodriguez knew what would unfold next. The others, Rachel, Lauren, even George waiting at the mansion, had been kept deliberately ignorant of the contingency plan. Their reactions needed to establish plausible deniability. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered like predatory birds drawn by the whiff of scandal involving a prominent businessman. Nathan emerged into their midst, ignoring shouted questions as he moved toward his waiting car. The media presence was no accident. An anonymous tip had ensured coverage of the custody transfer, creating public visibility that would complicate any immediate attempt to move Lily into Preston's network. Nathan's driver pulled away from the curb, merging into Boston's late-morning traffic with practiced ease. In the back seat, Nathan activated his phone's secure line, connecting to Rodriguez, who had remained in the courthouse to track Bennett's movements. They're headed for the service exit, black SUV, waiting windows tinted beyond legal limits. 2 men in suits providing escort. The information confirmed their prediction. Bennett would not take Lily to any legitimate residence where she might be found by conventional means. The court order provided legal cover for her transfer, but Preston would want her secured quickly away from potential intervention. Nathan's response was calm, despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Track but maintain distance. No intervention until the final destination. The tracking device in Lily's rabbit toy transmitted her location to the custom application on Nathan's phone, the small blue dot moving steadily away from the courthouse. The plan required patience, allowing Preston's operation to reveal itself fully before Nathan's team intervened. By early afternoon, the tracking dot had stopped moving, its location stabilizing at an address in Beacon Hill, one of Boston's most exclusive neighborhoods where historic brownstones commanded prices in the tens of millions. Rodriguez confirmed the address belonged to a property registered to one of Preston's shell companies, ostensibly maintained as a residence for visiting executives. Nathan's team assembled at a hotel suite 3 blocks away. Patricia Rodriguez and 2 security specialists Rodriguez had vetted personally. The operation they were about to undertake existed in a legal gray area, at best potentially crossing into criminal territory, depending on how events unfolded. Patricia had insisted on being present precisely because of these legal complications, prepared to manage consequences if their plan went awry. Satellite imagery and property records displayed on Rodriguez's laptop showed a 4-story brownstone with limited access points, front entrance service door at rear, and a rooftop terrace accessible only from inside. Security systems appeared substantial, but not impenetrable, particularly with the specialized equipment Rodriguez's team had procured. The communication device hidden in Lily's dress collar had remained silent, suggesting she had not yet found an opportunity to activate it safely. Without confirmation of her exact location within the building or the number of people present, the team faced significant unknowns. As sunset approached, casting long shadows across Boston's historic streets, the device finally activated Lily's whispered voice emerging from Rodriguez's specialized receiver. 3rd floor, corner room with blue wallpaper. 1 guard outside door. Preston arriving at 7 for dinner. The information had been delivered with remarkable precision, confirming Nathan's assessment of Lily's observational skills and presence of mind. Before the transmission ended, she added one crucial detail. The basement has other children. 3 girls. Locked rooms. The revelation transformed their rescue operation into something more complex. What had been planned as Lily's extraction now carried additional moral implications. Leaving the other children behind would consign them to Preston's network, yet attempting to remove them all significantly increased the operation's risk profile. Nathan's decision came without hesitation. We take them all. The team adjusted their approach accordingly, revising entry plans and extraction routes to accommodate multiple children. Rodriguez dispatched an associate to arrange secure temporary housing outside Boston, where the rescued children could be sheltered until more permanent solutions could be implemented. As darkness fell over the city, Nathan changed from his business suit into darker, more functional attire. The operation required his direct participation, not only because Lily would respond most readily to his presence, but because he refused to delegate her safety to others when the stakes were so high. Patricia reviewed the legal implications one final time, her expression grave. If this succeeds, you'll still face potential charges. Kidnapping, breaking and entering, possibly assault, depending on how the security team responds. Even with evidence of Preston's operation, the court order gives Bennett legal custody. Nathan checked the non-lethal equipment Rodriguez had provided, his movements precise, despite his lack of experience with such operations. Some risks transcend legal considerations. Rodriguez's team approached the brownstone from multiple angles, utilizing the cover of darkness and the neighborhood's privacy-oriented architecture. Surveillance confirmed 5 individuals inside: Bennett, 2 security personnel, a household staff member, and Lily. Preston had not yet arrived, providing a narrow window for intervention before his presence complicated matters further. The security system yielded to Rodriguez's electronic countermeasures, its silent alarm redirected to their own equipment rather than the monitoring service. The team entered through the service entrance, neutralizing the first guard with a tranquilizer before he could raise an alarm. The second security officer, positioned outside Lily's room, proved more challenging, necessitating a physical confrontation that Rodriguez handled with professional efficiency. Bennett was located in the first-floor study, reviewing documents that appeared to detail offshore financial transactions. His surprise at the intrusion quickly transformed to fear when he recognized Nathan. Before he could raise an alarm, Rodriguez subdued him, securing his hands and administering a mild sedative to ensure his continued silence. Nathan found Lily in the blue room she had described, sitting motionless on the edge of a bed, still clutching her rabbit toy. Her expression upon seeing him contained none of the expected relief, only grim determination beyond her years. The basement. We need to hurry. They're moving the other girls tonight. She led them to a concealed staircase behind a false panel in the pantry, navigating the unfamiliar house with uncanny precision. The basement revealed a clinical environment starkly different from the historic elegance above. Modern security doors with electronic locks, surveillance cameras, and a sterile processing area with photography equipment and document preparation stations. Rodriguez disabled the security system, protecting the locked rooms, revealing three girls between ages 6 and 10, their expressions transitioning from fear to cautious hope as Lily spoke to them in reassuring tones. Documentation found in a nearby filing cabinet confirmed the horrifying efficiency of Preston's operation. Each child had been assigned to a client, with transportation scheduled for the following day to destinations across Europe and Asia. The extraction proceeded according to plan until the moment they reached the service entrance with the rescued children. Headlights swept across the narrow alleyway as a vehicle pulled up to the rear of the property, Preston arriving earlier than expected for his meeting with Bennett. Nathan directed Rodriguez to continue the extraction with the other children while he and Lily created a diversion. The decision came not from strategic calculation, but from visceral certainty that confronting Preston had become necessary, not merely for their immediate safety, but for any hope of ending his operation permanently. As Rodriguez led the other girls toward the pre-arranged transportation, Nathan positioned himself in the study where Bennett lay unconscious. Documentation of Preston's trafficking operation spread deliberately across the antique desk. Lily insisted on remaining with Nathan, despite his attempts to send her with the others, her determination unyielding. "I need to see his face when he loses." The simple statement carried such conviction that Nathan relented, positioning her behind him as footsteps approached the study door. When Preston entered, his initial confusion at finding Nathan rather than Bennett quickly shifted to calculated assessment, his expression revealing nothing beyond mild inconvenience. William Preston, at 55, retained the polished appearance of old money, silver hair, perfectly styled, bespoke suit fitting his tall frame, with precision signet ring gleaming on his manicured right hand. His voice emerged cultured and controlled despite the unexpected confrontation. "Mr. Morgan, this constitutes breaking and entering, not to mention violation of a court order. Hardly behavior becoming of someone of your position." Nathan remained silent, allowing Preston's gaze to track to the documents spread across the desk. Client lists, payment records, photographs of children with clinical assessments of their marketability. Understanding dawned in Preston's eyes, followed by something colder and more calculating. "I see Bennett has been indiscreet with sensitive business materials. An unfortunate lapse in judgment. The attempt to distance himself from the evidence might have appeared absurd had it not reflected the reality of Preston's existence, a man so insulated by wealth and influence that direct accountability had become a foreign concept." Nathan moved slightly, allowing Preston to notice Lily standing behind him. The sight of the child triggered the first genuine emotion to cross Preston's features, not concern or shame, but irritation at operational disruption. "The court awarded custody to her uncle. You're complicating a legally sanctioned family reunification, Mr. Morgan." The calm recitation of his legal shield revealed Preston's confidence in the systems he had corrupted. Even confronted with evidence of his crimes, he expected the protections of wealth and influence to prevail as they always had. Nathan advanced slowly, his voice pitched to carry no further than the room's confines. "The others are already gone. The evidence has been duplicated and distributed to multiple federal agencies, media outlets, and international organizations. Your operation ends tonight." For the first time, calculation gave way to genuine alarm in Preston's expression. He glanced toward the door, assessing escape options with sudden urgency. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. The people I serve, they don't tolerate disruption." The threat carried weight beyond Preston himself, hinting at networks of power that extended into realms Nathan had only begun to glimpse. Preston's hand moved toward his jacket pocket, but Nathan closed the distance between them with unexpected speed, immobilizing the older man's arm before he could retrieve whatever weapon he carried. The physical confrontation was brief but decisive. Despite Preston's height advantage, he possessed none of Nathan's combat training or physical conditioning. Within moments, Preston found himself secured to an antique chair, his expression transitioning from shock to a more dangerous calculation. This changes nothing. I'll be released within hours. The system works for me, not for vigilante billionaires playing hero. Lily stepped forward, then moving to stand directly before the man who had terrorized her existence. Her small face held none of the fear that might be expected, only a clarity that rendered her next words all the more devastating. I remember everything. The children you took, the basement at New Horizons, the special house where you kept us before sending us away. I can identify every person who worked for you, every place, every child. Preston's composure fractured genuine fear bleeding through his cultivated facade. The implication of Lily's statement extended beyond immediate legal concerns to the foundation of his carefully constructed public persona. You're a child, traumatized, confused. No one would take your word over mine. Lily's response came with unflinching certainty. They will when they find the others, the ones like me who got away. We remember everything. The simple declaration struck deeper than any elaborated threat. Preston's operation had always relied on the disposability and interchangeability of its victims. Children too young, too traumatized, or too isolated to pose credible threats to his network. The possibility that some had not only escaped but retained detailed knowledge of his operation introduced a variable his careful calculations had never accommodated. As if summoned by Lily's words, the sound of police sirens penetrated the brownstone's thick walls, growing steadily louder. Nathan checked his watch, right on schedule. The evidence Rodriguez had distributed had reached its designated recipients, triggering the law enforcement response they had anticipated. Preston's expression cycled through disbelief, rage, and finally a cold resignation as he recognized the unraveling of decades of careful manipulation. You have no idea what you've done. The people involved, judges, politicians, police commissioners, they won't allow this to reach them. I'm merely the visible piece of something far larger. Nathan moved toward the door, guiding Lily with a protective hand on her shoulder. Some systems need to collapse before they can be rebuilt. When federal agents breached the brownstone minutes later, they discovered Preston still secured to the antique chair, surrounded by evidence of his trafficking operation. Of Nathan and Lily, there was no sign. Rodriguez's extraction plan had accounted for their departure through a route not covered by the arriving authorities. The media explosion began within hours. Breaking news alerts across networks, headlines documenting a major child trafficking ring with elite connections uncovered in Boston. Preston's arrest dominated coverage, his carefully cultivated philanthropic image juxtaposed against evidence too substantial to suppress despite his connections. Nathan and Lily observed the unfolding story from a secure location outside the city temporary sanctuary, while Patricia navigated the legal complexities their actions had created. The other rescued children had been placed under protective custody, with federal authorities, their testimony adding to the mounting case against Preston's network. 3 days after the raid, Rachel arrived at the safe house, her academic reserve giving way to uncharacteristic emotion as she embraced her brother. Her connections had proved invaluable in ensuring the evidence reached specific federal prosecutors known for their resistance to political pressure. The case is expanding beyond Preston. 3 judges, a state senator, 2 police captains, all taken into custody for questioning. There's talk of a special prosecutor being appointed. The systematic dismantling of Preston's protection network had begun, but Nathan harbored no illusions about the challenges ahead. Wealth and power created resilient systems of self-preservation, and those implicated would leverage every resource to distance themselves from Preston's operation. What about Lily? The custody ruling still stands legally. Rachel's expression softened as she glanced toward the window where Lily sat reading, seemingly absorbed in her book, though Nathan suspected she missed nothing of their conversation. That's actually why I'm here. Judge Harmon has been removed from the bench pending investigation. All his recent rulings are under review, including Lily's case. The development created a legal opening, though not yet resolution. Bennett had been arrested as an accomplice in Preston's operation, his role as Lily's supposed uncle exposed as fabrication. With both Bennett and Preston in custody, the immediate threat to Lily had diminished, but her legal status remained uncertain. 2 weeks after Preston's arrest, Nathan and Lily returned to the Morgan estate under temporary protective custody arrangements negotiated by Patricia. The mansion had been secured with enhanced measures, Additional personnel upgraded systems protocols designed by Rodriguez to prevent any further intrusions. Lily's re-entry to the house carried none of the hesitation of her first arrival. She moved through the halls with the confidence of belonging, greeting George with a hug that visibly moved the typically reserved butler. Her room, maintained exactly as she had left it, welcomed her back with familiar comfort that helped ease the lingering tension of recent events. The legal proceedings continued at the deliberate pace of federal prosecution, with Patricia providing daily updates on developments that might affect Lily's situation. Preston maintained his silence, refusing cooperation despite mounting evidence against him. His network, however, began to fracture under pressure, with lesser participants offering testimony in exchange for consideration. Lauren Walker visited regularly, her professional involvement evolving into genuine friendship as the circumstances that had brought her into their lives transformed. Her guidance proved invaluable as Nathan navigated the complex requirements for permanent guardianship, her knowledge of the system helping identify pathways that might otherwise have remained obscured. During one such visit, as Lily and George planted tulip bulbs in the garden for the following spring, Lauren broached the subject that had lingered unspoken between them. The federal investigation has created an unusual situation. With the exposure of corruption in the family court system, there's an opportunity to expedite your guardianship application, but it would mean placing Lily in the spotlight. Her testimony would become central to multiple cases. Nathan watched Lily through the window, her serious expression as she carefully positioned each bulb according to George's instructions. The weight of the decision extended beyond legal considerations to the core of Lily's healing process. "It's not my decision to make." She survived by recognizing when adults were making choices that affected her without her input. "I won't continue that pattern." Lauren's expression reflected unexpected approval, her assessment of Nathan evolving visibly with this perspective. When they presented the options to Lily that evening, her response reflected the remarkable maturity that continued to surprise even those who had come to know her well. "The other children are being brave. They're telling their stories to help stop the bad men. I should be brave too." Her simple framing of the situation cut through adult complexities to the essential moral clarity that had guided her survival. Nathan recognized in that moment that while he might provide protection and resources, Lily's path forward would be determined by her own extraordinary resilience and sense of justice. The following months brought a carefully structured integration of Lily's experiences into the broader legal proceedings. Dr. Chen supervised each interview, ensuring psychological support, while federal prosecutors gathered testimony that would prove pivotal in multiple cases. Lily approached each session with determined focus, her recall providing details that investigators had missed and connections they had not yet established. Between these difficult sessions, Nathan created space for normal childhood experiences. Enrollment in a small private school with exceptional security measures, played dates with carefully vetted classmates, regular outings to museums and parks under George's watchful supervision. The balance between addressing her past and building her future required constant attention adjustments made based on Dr. Chen's guidance and Lily's own expressed needs. 6 months after Preston's arrest, the formal hearing for Nathan's permanent guardianship application took place in a federal courthouse, the case having been elevated beyond local jurisdiction due to its connection to ongoing criminal proceedings. The judge assigned to the case, Marianne Daniels, carried a reputation for thorough review and resistance to external influence, qualities that inspired confidence in the process despite the systemic failures previously encountered. The courtroom presented a striking contrast to Judge Harmon's perfunctory hearing. Federal marshals maintaining security, court-appointed child advocates present to represent Lily's interests, experts in childhood trauma, providing context for her experiences. Rachel sat beside Patricia at the plaintiff's table, her academic expertise in family law providing additional perspective to their presentation. When Lily entered to provide her statement, she walked with steady purpose to the witness stand, her blue dress replaced by a simple skirt and sweater that reflected her growing confidence in expressing preferences. Her testimony, delivered with remarkable composure, addressed not only her experiences in Preston's network, but her time with Nathan, the stability he had provided, the home they had created together. Judge Daniels, unlike her compromised predecessor, listened with genuine attention, her questions revealing both legal thoroughness and human compassion. When she addressed Lily directly, her tone carried respect rather than condescension. Lily, I've reviewed reports from Dr. Chen and your court-appointed advocate, but I'd like to hear directly from you. Well, where do you feel safest? Where do you want to live? Lily's response came without hesitation, her small hands folded neatly on the railing before her. With Mr. Nathan, with my dad. The simple declaration, particularly the final word, sent a ripple through the courtroom. Nathan felt something shift in his chest, an expansion of emotion beyond anything he had experienced since Elizabeth's death. The term dad had never been discussed between them, emerging spontaneously from Lily's own sense of their relationship. Judge Daniels nodded, making a note before addressing the court with definitive authority. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, this court grants permanent legal guardianship of Lily Bennett to Nathan Morgan, with all rights and responsibilities therein. The adoption petition may proceed through standard channels with expedited consideration, given the exceptional circumstances of this case. The ruling represented not merely legal victory, but validation of the bond that had formed between Nathan and Lily, a connection that had begun with a simple request for shelter and evolved into something that had transformed both their lives fundamentally. Outside the courthouse, media gathered in anticipation of the decision, their interest in the case extending beyond its connection to Preston's criminal proceedings to the human story at its center, the billionaire and the orphan whose lives had intersected with such unexpected consequences. Rachel managed the press with practiced efficiency, allowing Nathan and Lily to depart with minimal exposure, though photographs of them leaving the courthouse together would appear in newspapers nationwide the following day. The public narrative had shifted dramatically from the initial scandal. Nathan now cast as protector rather than opportunist, his actions reframed as necessary intervention against corrupted systems. That evening, as they returned to the mansion that had become genuinely home, Lily's question emerged with characteristic directness. What happens now to the other children? The inquiry reflected her continued concern for those who shared her experiences, her personal victory insufficient without ensuring similar protection for others. Nathan had anticipated the question, having worked with Patricia and Rachel to develop answers that balanced honesty with hope. The federal investigation has identified 37 children from Preston's records who were sent overseas. Task forces are working to locate them, though it may take time. The 3 girls we found that night are with foster families who specialize in trauma recovery. And Preston's network continues to unravel. 3 more facilities like New Horizons have been shut down. The statistics represented both progress and the magnitude of harm Preston's operation had inflicted. Lily absorbed the information with solemn consideration before offering her own assessment. It's not enough. There are more places like New Horizons, more men like Preston. The simple observation contained no childish naivety about the complexity of dismantling such networks, only clear-eyed recognition of reality. Nathan nodded, acknowledging the truth of her statement while considering how to address the underlying concern. You're right, which is why I've been thinking about something more permanent than just reacting to one case. In the months since Preston's arrest, Nathan had begun restructuring portions of his business empire, redirecting resources toward initiatives that addressed the systemic vulnerabilities Preston had exploited. The concept had evolved gradually from immediate response to long-term vision, but Lily's concern crystallized its necessity. 3 days later, Nathan presented his proposal to a small gathering in the mansion's rarely used formal dining room. Rachel, Patricia, Lauren, Dr. Chen, and Rodriguez, each bringing specialized expertise to the emerging project. The presentation outlined creation of a new foundation with ambitious scope, not merely providing services to vulnerable children, but actively working to transform the systems that had failed them. This isn't about charity, it's about structural change. The Morgan Foundation will focus on 3 areas: direct support for children recovered from trafficking situations, legal advocacy for reform of child protection systems, and investigative resources to identify and dismantle networks like Preston's. The scale of investment required was substantial, representing significant reallocation of both Nathan's personal resources and corporate philanthropic commitments. Rachel, initially skeptical of such major financial restructuring, found herself nodding with growing approval as the detailed implementation plans unfolded. Lauren raised practical questions about operational approach, her experience with existing systems, informing concerns about resistance to external intervention. The discussion evolved into collaborative problem-solving, each participant contributing perspective from their area of expertise. As the meeting concluded, Lily appeared in the doorway, having apparently listened from just outside. Her expression contained none of the hesitation that might be expected from a child interrupting adult business, only purposeful determination as she approached the table. It should be called Lily's Haven. Not for me, but because lilies grow even in dark places. And it should have a real place where kids can stay until they find their forever homes, not just offices. The suggestion silenced the adults' its simple wisdom, cutting through complex planning to the essential purpose of their endeavor. Nathan recognized immediately the rightness of both the name and the concrete focus Lily had identified. Beyond programs and advocacy, children needed immediate sanctuary while systems were reformed. When Nathan presented the finalized concept to his corporate board, 2 weeks later, the foundation's mission had evolved to include establishment of residential centers, providing comprehensive support for children recovered from trafficking and other extreme circumstances. The first such facility would be constructed on land adjacent to the Morgan estate, designed with input from child psychologists, security specialists, and survivors themselves. The project advanced with remarkable speed. Nathan's business acumen applied fully to this new venture. Groundbreaking for the first Lily's Haven Center occurred 3 months after the guardianship ruling, the ceremony attended by federal officials whose involvement in Preston's prosecution had revealed genuine commitment to addressing the systemic issues the case had exposed. As construction progressed through winter into spring, Lily's own healing continued. Regular sessions with Dr. Chen, gradual engagement with selected classmates, increasing comfort in expressing both preferences and concerns. Her nightmares diminished in frequency, though not entirely in intensity, the psychological impacts of her experiences requiring ongoing attention rather than simple resolution. Nathan's adaptation to parenthood evolved similarly, initial uncertainty giving way to growing confidence as he learned to balance protection with encouragement of independence. The business empire that had once consumed his entire focus reconfigured around this new priority, his executive team assuming greater operational responsibility while he maintained strategic oversight. Lauren's role transformed as well, her professional involvement giving way to personal connection that developed gradually into something deeper. Her initial visits to discuss Lily's case evolved into family dinners, weekend outings, conversations that extended beyond immediate concerns to shared values and complementary perspectives. By early summer, tulips planted the previous fall bloomed throughout the mansion's gardens, their vibrant colors transforming landscapes previously maintained for appearance rather than joy. Lily had supervised their planting with serious attention to color placement, creating patterns visible from her bedroom window, tangible evidence of both permanence and growth. The formal adoption proceedings concluded with less public attention than the guardianship hearing, the legal process finalizing what had already become emotional reality. The certificate arrived on a Tuesday morning, its official language confirming that Lily Bennett was now legally Lily Morgan, with all rights and relationships therein established. That evening, as Nathan read to Lily before bed, a ritual maintained despite her increasing ability to read independently, she interrupted with characteristic directness. "Can we visit the new building tomorrow, Mayor? I want to see if they're following the plans." Her proprietary interest in the Haven's development had grown with each phase of construction, her suggestions often revealing insights adults had overlooked. Nathan nodded, making a mental note to arrange site access with appropriate safety measures. "I spoke to the contractor this morning. The first floor framing is complete. We can walk through and see how the spaces are taking shape." Lily settled back against her pillows, satisfaction evident in her expression, before it shifted to more contemplative consideration. "Do you think it will be enough to really help the other kids?" The question reflected her recurring concern about the adequacy of their response to systemic problems she understood with uncomfortable clarity. Nathan considered his answer carefully, respecting her need for honesty rather than facile reassurance. "It won't solve everything. No single project could. But it creates a model that can be replicated, demonstrates what's possible when resources are directed properly. And most importantly, it provides immediate safety while the larger systems are reformed." Sometimes transformation begins with creating one truly safe place, then expanding outward. The perspective seemed to satisfy Lily, her expression clearing as she returned her attention to the story. Nathan continued reading the familiar words, providing structure to the end of their day, while his thoughts lingered on the questions she had raised, the perpetual challenge of addressing immediate needs while pursuing systemic change. The following morning dawned clear and warm, perfect weather for their planned visit to the construction site. Lily selected her outfit with particular care, her growing interest in self-expression emerging in thoughtful combinations of color and practicality. The little girl who had arrived in soaked rags now contemplated whether sneakers or boots would be more appropriate for navigating an active building site. As they prepared to leave, George appeared with unusual hesitation, a carefully wrapped package in his hands. "Before you go, Miss Lily, I thought you might want to bring this." He presented the package with formal gravity that signaled its importance. Lily unwrapped it carefully, revealing a wooden birdhouse painted in cheerful colors, sized perfectly for installation on the Haven's grounds. So the birds can have a home at the new place too. The simple gift represented George's understated support for the project, his traditional reserve giving way to genuine investment in its success. Lily accepted it with appropriate seriousness, her expression conveying understanding of both the practical offering and its symbolic significance. At the construction site, the Haven's form had begun to emerge from architectural plans into physical reality. Steel framework defining spaces designed specifically for children transitioning from trauma to healing. The central courtyard, still merely outlined by foundation work, would eventually feature gardens and play areas visible from every residential room, creating a protected space for rebuilding trust in the external world. Lily moved through the site with proprietary confidence, questioning the construction manager about timeline adjustments and material selections with surprising technical specificity. Her attention focused particularly on the residential wing, examining room dimensions and window placements with critical assessment. The windows are good. They need to see outside but also feel safe from people looking in. Her insight reflected direct experience translated into design consideration, the perspective of a child who had endured captivity, informing creation of space that balanced security with openness. The construction manager noted her comment with genuine attention, recognizing the value of her unique viewpoint. As they toured the administrative section, Nathan received an unexpected call from Patricia, updates on the ongoing prosecutions stemming from Preston's case. He stepped aside to take the call while Lily continued her inspection of the building's emerging structure. Patricia's news reflected the challenging reality of prosecuting powerful figures. Some of Preston's associates had secured reduced charges through cooperation. Others leveraged connections to delay proceedings. A few had fled jurisdiction entirely. Yet the network's fundamental operation had been disrupted, its protection systems compromised sufficiently to prevent immediate reconstitution. When Nathan rejoined Lily, he found her standing in what would become the center's main entrance, studying the blueprints spread across a temporary workbench. Her expression contained the serious concentration he had come to recognize as indication of significant thought, rather than concern. There should be something here when people first come in, something that tells them they're safe now. She pointed to the entry foyer on the blueprints, her finger tracing the space with deliberate movement. Not just words on a sign, something that feels like coming home. The observation crystallized what would become the Haven's defining characteristic. Not merely functional support, but genuine sanctuary at a place of belonging for children whose understanding of home had been systematically distorted. That afternoon, after returning to the mansion, Lily led Nathan to a corner of the garden where spring planting had left a small section untouched. She had brought George's birdhouse, carefully selecting a mounting location with consideration of both visibility and security for its future occupants. As George helped secure the structure to a sturdy post, Lily surveyed their work with critical assessment before nodding approval. Her attention then shifted to the empty garden space surrounding the installation, her expression turning contemplative. "We should make something here, a special garden for the Haven." The project emerged organically over subsequent days. Lily consulting gardening books, making careful sketches of planting arrangements, selecting species with George's guidance, while incorporating her own symbolic considerations. Nathan observed the process with quiet appreciation, recognizing its therapeutic value beyond the tangible outcome. By midsummer, the garden had taken shape, a circular arrangement of plants surrounding a small seating area with the birdhouse as its anchor point. At its center stood a simple wooden structure, larger than the birdhouse, but similar in basic design, painted in the same cheerful colors, but sized for a child rather than birds. When the first residents prepared to move into the completed haven that fall, Lily insisted on showing them this garden first before they entered the main facility. She led a small group of children, ranging from 5 to 11 years old, along the path she had helped create, explaining each element with serious attention to detail before stopping at the central structure. This is a wishing house, not for living in, but for remembering that everybody needs a safe place. Even when it feels like there isn't one, there is. You just haven't found it yet. She opened the small door to reveal an interior lined with tiny shelves, each holding a smooth stone painted with a single word: hope, courage, family, tomorrow, strength. Additional empty shelves awaited stones the new residents might add their contributions, expanding the structure's meaning beyond Lily's initial vision. On a small plaque affixed to the front, simple words captured the garden's purpose: for every child still searching for a home and for those who have found one. As the children explored the garden, some cautiously, others with growing curiosity, Nathan observed from a respectful distance. Lauren joined him, their shoulders touching lightly in the comfortable proximity that had developed between them. Her expression reflected professional assessment, tempered by personal investment in the haven's success. It's a good beginning. The simple observation acknowledged both achievement and ongoing challenge, the haven representing significant progress, while recognizing the extensive work still required to address root causes of the problems it addressed. Nathan watched as Lily guided one particularly hesitant girl toward the wishing house, her approach gentle but matter-of-fact, without the condescension children often experience from adults attempting comfort. The interaction reflected Lily's unique capacity to connect with these peers through shared experience, while offering genuine hope rather than empty reassurance. As autumn light filtered through changing leaves, casting dappled patterns across the garden, Nathan recognized the profound transformation of his own life since that stormy night when a desperate child had asked for the simplest of shelters. What had begun as momentary compassion had evolved into purpose that integrated his business acumen, resources, and newfound understanding of systems that failed society's most vulnerable members. More significantly, the man who had existed in isolated success for a decade following his wife's death had discovered family in its truest sense, not through biological connection, but through choice, commitment, and mutual healing. Lily had given him purpose beyond acquisition and achievement, while he had provided her security to rebuild from profound trauma without defining her by those experiences. The haven stood as physical manifestation of this transformation, turning personal healing outward to address broader societal wounds, creating sanctuary that could expand beyond a single child's rescue to systematic intervention. Its existence represented not conclusion, but beginning. The first step in addressing dysfunction Lily had exposed through her remarkable journey from desperate survival to purposeful advocacy. When visitors to the haven asked about its origins, Nathan offered the simple truth that had become their shared narrative. Sometimes the most profound change begins with the smallest request, with a child standing in the rain asking only for shelter until the storm passes.